can make a way. Hey, hey, so humble yourselves and pray and guard his Torah. Obey each day. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Hoshiana, Hoshiana. Hallelujah, hallelujah.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Well, today I've got a very interesting message for you. It comes from something that I've been listening to recently. I'm visiting a seminar that I took previously, and Yahweh laid it on my heart to go and listen to it again. It's by a guy by the name of Lou Tice, and the seminar, it's on audio, but it's on Audible, by the way, so it's like an audio book. It's called Mastering the Attitude of Achievement. And so it really has some interesting points in it. One of the major points that Lou sets out in the beginning is he says, we as human beings act in accordance with the truth, not as it really is, but in how we believe it. So it's very interesting. We act in accordance with the truth, not in how the truth really is, but instead how we believe the truth to be. And he goes through a bunch of different scenarios where he proves just that. One of the ones that I forgot to write down, but is a good one, is that if you were to go and talk to a surgeon a med student that was in the last part of their med school, and you said, you know what, if you did this surgery on me, it would be a whole lot cheaper if we got the doctor to go do it. Would you do the surgery for me? And the med student would say, no, I can't do that. I can't do that. Even though in a week from now, they're going to go and have their graduation at some point in time where somebody will stand up and say, guess what, you're a doctor. And they'll give them a piece of paper, and all of a sudden they believe they can do it. A week ago, they didn't believe they could do the surgery. But after they get that piece of paper, all of a sudden they believe they can do it. Now, a week ago, could they do the surgery? Sure. Might have broke some laws, but they could do it. But they didn't believe they could do it. So you act in accordance with the truth, not as the truth is, but in how you believe it. Now, here's the funny thing that Lou pointed out is they'll get that piece of paper and they'll go hang it on the wall, and all of a sudden you believe they can do it too. All right. There's another story that he tells that I really, really liked. It was about a guy named Cliff Young. Now, Cliff Young entered into a long-distance race over in Australia. And this race by ultramarathoners is called the toughest race around. It's 543 miles through the Australian outback, or somewhere along those lines, from Sydney all the way to Melbourne. Now, I went and looked at it to figure out how far 543 miles is. And at 400 miles, you get into the Gulf of Mexico from here. So just to give your mind an idea as to what that is. It is a long way. Okay? So what was interesting about this race is that when Cliff showed up to the race, he looked out of place. He didn't look like the other runners that were out there. All the other runners were in specific clothing. They had sponsors on there. And what Lou was Lou was a 61-year-old farm guy. He showed up in bib overalls, and he had galoshes on his feet. He didn't look like a runner at all. And all the people that were there doing the broadcast on it got up and said, we need to go interview this guy. Who does he think he is? So they went over and they interviewed Cliff, and they said, yeah, you know, you're out here with world-class runners about to do the toughest race. Do you really think you can do this? And he said, yeah, I feel pretty good about it. I said, well, how did you train to do this? He said, well, growing up, we've got a 2,000-acre farm, and we didn't have enough money to buy horses. And so we've got 2,000 sheep. We've got lots of cattle. I would run across our farm, sitting there going back and forth, rustling all the cattle. And, there were times when a storm would be coming in, and I would have to run out there and get all the sheep and get them back in before the storm got here, because storms are pretty bad there. And he said, I'd be out there running for 2 or 3 days straight. And that's how I got into shape. And the broadcasters, they just dismissed him. And so the signal gun shot, and they took off. Well, within the first mile, he was the last one in line, and nobody thought anything of it. What's interesting is that the runners there had a truth. So like when you look at a runner that is doing an ultramarathon, they're pros, you think that they are an authority. They know what the truth is, right? So their truth is that it was humanly impossible. No, that's not what they said. They said that you should run 18 hours and sleep 6. And it was humanly impossible to do anything otherwise because you drop down dead. All right? That was the absolute truth. And so all the pro runners acted in accordance with that. Problem was that Cliff grew up on the backwoods. He didn't get TV out there. He didn't have newspaper articles. He didn't have Pro Runners magazine coming to his doorstep. So he didn't know that truth. Instead, what he decided to do was he was going to run for 5 days straight until he got there. And he did. What's interesting about that was, so he didn't know you were supposed to sleep. He just said, I got to go. They're going to catch me. And so he just kept going. What's interesting about that was, is by the time he got through with the race, he shaved a day and a half off the record. A day and a half. And everybody thought, man, this guy to begin with was going to be nothing. There was a contender that shaved a day and a half off the record. That was pretty amazing. Now, that part's kind of cool, but the next part is what's even more interesting. The next year, his record got broke, and then they broke it the year afterwards. Because all of a sudden, the belief changed. All right? So what they knew to be true was no longer true, and now they could act in accordance with that new truth. Cliff had a very interesting running style, too. He didn't just sit there and run like a normal runner. He kind of shuffled his feet, and what they found out was that saved energy over the run because they weren't picking their feet up so far, and that was what was able... that they adopted that running style, and that's what let them be able to break it from there on out. I want y'all to think about that with Lou and think about that with the pro runners, all right? They didn't act in accordance with the truth. Instead, they acted in accordance with the truth as they believed it. Cliff did the same thing. Who came out on top? Cliff did, all right? With that in mind, it's very important for us to evaluate what truths we know about life and about ourselves. It's equally important to find out who did we gain those truths from. Okay, so all those people that were running out there, they got theirs from coaches, they got it from doctors, they got it from the other runners that were before him. That was the truth. 18 hours was all you could do. But Cliff didn't know that. What kinds of things, those type people is something that Lou referred to as the who said's. And the reason why they said that was like, who said you could only run 18 hours? Well, they said. That's a who said. And they're important because they have power, they have prestige, they've been to school, they know all this stuff. So they must be a who said of the greatest magnitude, is what he called it. That's very important because we all have who saids in our lives. We have who saids that tell us things. And you may hear those on the inside, and you'll say, well, who said that? My mom said it. My dad said it. My granddaddy said that. My grandmother said that. Matter of fact, I got aunts and uncles who said stuff. I had teachers, I had coaches. All kinds of people become who saids in your life. And what Lou challenged you to do in this is that to evaluate what they said about you and find out, is it true? And are you acting in accordance with that truth, or is there another truth associated with it? Now, I was reading another book by Zig Ziglar, and he talked about this handicapped guy. He got told in like 3rd grade that he was special ed, he wasn't going to be able to amount to nothing, he should just go out and be a derelict. And he lived in accordance with that all the way up until he was in his mid-20s. He got a job as being a street sweeper. He was doing, all the remedial jobs associated with that. And it wasn't until somebody took notice of him and went in and gave him an IQ test that they found out he had an IQ of over 160. That's over Einstein. And then all of a sudden, his truth changed. He had a different belief, and he started going and acting in accordance with that belief versus what he'd been told before, which was he would never amount to anything. He started writing books, he was doing seminars, and he made a very good life for himself. When teachers come along and they tell you things, and they tell you things about yourself, and you let that sink inside of you, if you let that dictate who you're going to be and what you do, it's going to dictate you regardless, but you need to get in control of that. We as parents and grandparents, uncles, leaders, and are all who saids of the greatest magnitude. So I want y'all to realize that. You all are who saids of the greatest magnitude. And you're talking to people. You're talking to your kids. You're talking to your nieces, your nephews. You're talking to your workers if you're a boss somewhere. You're talking to all kinds of people. What are you saying to them, and is it the truth? Be careful how you impart the truth into others too, because you can say things at a glance and not even realize that you did it. I heard a story one time of a granddaddy that was riding with his granddaughter in a car somewhere. And he was talking about, it was a group function type deal. And he was talking to the girl's dad about another individual in the group. And the grandpa said, "Man, isn't she the sweetest?" And the little girl heard it. Well, later on that day, something happened, and the two girls got into a little bit of trouble, and they were needing help. It wasn't big trouble. They were needing off of something. And the granddaughter looked over, and she said, "I think she should go first," talking about the other little girl. "She's sweeter than I am." And she turned down like that. And Grandpa didn't even know that he had imparted that truth into his granddaughter. Now, that's not what his granddaughter meant to him. He knew his granddaughter was the sweetest. His granddaughter was awesome. His granddaughter was precious. He loved that granddaughter, and he didn't even realize that he had pricked her heart that way and turned her down the wrong path. When you tell truths, it's very easy for them to go inside of somebody. And people will act in accordance with that belief, because if you tell somebody's worthless, more than likely they're going to act worthless. Now, I'm geared a little bit different way. If somebody tries to tell me something, I'm going to go prove them wrong. But that's not most people. Most people act in accordance with that belief. If you tell somebody they're weak, they're not going to go to the gym. They're going to sit there and think, "I'm just weak, I can't do it." If you tell somebody that they're lazy, there's a high likelihood they're not going to get up and go to work real hard. Instead, they're going to sit at the house and do nothing. If you tell somebody they're sick, there are documented cases where people were misdiagnosed and told they were sick, and then all of a sudden another who said came along and said, "Guess what? That isn't what you have." And within no time flat, they were better. I was reminded of y'all know what cerebral palsy is? I was reading a case about a kid that was diagnosed with cerebral palsy, and they put him into a class with cerebral palsy kids. They had him over there doing all the rehab and everything with it. And at the end of the day, they were there for like 2 years doing that, not seeing any results. And then another doctor stepped in and said, "That kid doesn't have cerebral palsy. He's just mimicking what's going on with the other kids." They pulled him out of that, got him into a new situation. All of a sudden, he was normal within months. Your beliefs are very powerful. With that who said thing, with the guy that had the IQ test, it was the IQ test itself that changed his beliefs on the inside and made his life go better. Lou gave another, it was a story from The Wizard of Oz that's kind of the same thing, just to let you know who saids can wind up anywhere. So, who all seen The Wizard of Oz? Yeah. Was the Wizard of Oz really a wonderful wizard? No, he was a sham. He was a magician that wound up getting blown away, and he was hiding behind a curtain doing magician tricks in order to make people think he was better than what he was. But he did have power. Think about what he did with the Scarecrow. The Scarecrow thought he was brainless. He didn't have a brain. And so what he did is the Scarecrow revered him. He thought, "You are a who said of the greatest magnitude." He walked up to the wizard and said, "I need to be able to be smart." And he said, "Well, people who have degrees are smart." So he went over and he got him a diploma and handed him a diploma. And next thing you know, the Scarecrow's over there spouting Pythagorean theorem. Just like that, he had a mind shift change. You act in accordance with your belief. Not in accordance with the truth as it may be, but in accordance to how you believe it. Life and death are in the power of the tongue, especially if you are a who said of the greatest magnitude. Y'all look at Proverbs 18:21. Just so y'all know them what my words. Proverbs 18:21. Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those loving it eat its fruit. The reason why I put that there is because if you are a who said of the greatest magnitude, you have the ability to speak life into people. You also have the ability to speak death into them. And I'm not talking about physical death, although that is something that can happen. But you can impart spiritual and emotional death in them by the words that you say. And like the example I gave earlier, you may not even mean to have done it. You have to be very, very careful with what words you use. Let me reemphasize, we as parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, and leaders are all who saids of the greatest magnitude to someone. We can leave scars very easily. I know I have some. I have some that I know the people that gave them to me didn't mean to give to me. And it has limited my potential in certain areas in a lot of ways. And I'm just now starting to realize that's what happened. and that I can go and do things that I was not doing. It's not I don't have the capability to do it, but my belief told me I didn't have the capability to do it. You have to be careful that you don't do the same thing and put scars on other people, even if it's an accident. Now, I said a whole lot of stuff and we barely scrapped our scripture. So I want to go check out a couple of stories where we see people that have beliefs and find out if they were the truth, really, or if they were just the truth as people believed it. So let's go check out Numbers 13. We're going to read this whole chapter. No, we're not going to read the whole chapter. I'll omit it just a little bit. We're going to read it in some of 14. All right, what's going on right here is the children of Israel are about to go spy out the land, and everybody's super excited about it. Numbers 13:1. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, send men to spy out the land of Canaan, which, oh, by the way, that's Hebrew for Canaan, which I am giving to the children of Israel. Send one man from the tribe of their fathers, every one a leader among them. And by the command of Yahweh, Moshe sent them out from the wilderness of Paran, all of them men who were heads of the children of Israel. And these were their names. Now, I want you to note something here, all right? Not everybody who's in the scriptures gets listed by name, all right? These dudes were important dudes. So important they got named, but they were leaders of their house. It even called them, this word right here that says send men from each of the tribes, that word there is ish. And ish doesn't just mean man in Hebrew. It also means a great man. It can also be the same word as champion. So like with David and Goliath, whenever they said send a man out here to battle, that word right there was ish. They wanted him to send out a champion in order to fight with Goliath. Same thing right here. These guys had to be a top-notch guy. They had to be the pro athletes. These were the guys that were ready to go do the ultra marathon through the promised land to find out what was going on to see if we could get to go in. That's a who said of the greatest magnitude. Wouldn't you agree? That's important to know. These guys were specials. They were leaders. They were champions. They were the who said of the greatest magnitude, and they had been charged to go do a job, which was bring back word to the people. So there you go. They're going to come back and say, can we do this? Who said? The spies that went into the land. All right, let's keep reading. We're going to jump down to verse. I meant to leave out the guys' names. I apologize for that. We're going to jump down to verse 16. So it names all the guys that were from the different tribes and even gives their lineages. Verse 16. These are the names of the men whom Moshe sent to spy out the land. And Moshe called Hoshea, the son of Nun, Yehoshua. And Moshe sent them to spy out the land of Canaan and said to them, go up there into the south and go up into the mountains and see what the land is like and the people who dwell in it, whether strong or weak, whether few or many, and whether the land they dwell in is a good or evil, whether the cities they inhabit are in camps or strongholds, and whether the land is rich or poor, and whether there are forests there or not. And you shall be strong and bring some of the fruit of the land. Now the time was the season of the first fruits of the grapes. So they went up and spied out the land from the wilderness of Zin, as far as Rehob, near the entrance of Hamath. And they went up through the south and came to Hebron, and Ahinamah, and Shishi, and Talmi, and the descendants of Anak were there. Now Hebron was built 7 years before Zoan in Mitzrayim. And they came to the Wadi Eshcol, and they cut down from there a branch with one cluster of grapes. And they bore it between two of them on a pole, also the pomegranates and the figs. We looked up a picture of what that looks like one time, and there's a guy out in Italy that's growing big grapes. And this cluster, I mean, it's massive how big this cluster is. I'll have to see if I can find y'all a picture of it, but think about how big that is that they had to carry it between two guys on a pole. That's what the promised land is supposed to be like. Verse 24. That place was called the Wadi Eshcol because the cluster where the men of Israel cut down from there. And here comes the bad part. Or not the bad part, that's just what who said. And they returned from spying out the land after 40 days. And they went and came to Moshe and to Aharon and all the congregation of the children of Israel in the wilderness. They're all excited. Man, what happened out there? And they brought back word to them and to all the congregation and showed them the fruit of the land. Can y'all imagine the pomp and circumstances that was happening while this was going on? I bet you there was trumpets playing, all kinds of stuff, and them guys were walking in, and everybody's just like, ooh, ah, look how great those guys are. That's a who said of the greatest magnitude. And they reported to him and said, we went to the land where you sent us, and truly it flows with milk and honey, and this is its fruit. Can you imagine that washing over the people all of a sudden? Just how inspiring that is. Dude, it's real. You've always been telling us about it the whole time, but they saw it, and here's proof. But the people who dwell in the land are strong. Uh-oh. And the cities are walled and very great. And we saw the descendants of Anak there too. The Amalekites dwell in the land of the south, while the Hittites and the Jebusites and the Amorites dwell in the mountains. And the Kenaites dwell in the sea along the banks of the Jordan. That's kind of anticlimactic, isn't it? But Caleb silenced the people before Moshe, and he said, No. Let's go up at once and take possession, for we are certainly able to overcome it. But the men who had gone up with him said, we are not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we. Who said that? I mean, right now we don't have that proof. See, Caleb has a different truth than they do. He has a different truth. Where did his truth come from? We're going to get to that in a second because I'm going to show you where it came from. But you're right, it came from Yahweh. Where did these guys' truth come from? All in their head. So they're acting in accordance with the belief, not in how the truth really is, but the truth as they believe it. Verse 32, and they gave the children of Israel an evil report of the land which they had spied out, saying, the land through which we have gone as spies is a land eating up its inhabitants. And all the people who we saw in it are men of great size. This one really gets me. And we saw there the Nephilim, sons of Anak, of the Nephilim. And we were like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and so we were in their eyes. Now, how in the world would they be able to know what was going on in those people's heads? This is sure enough you bet you fear right now. And granted, I wasn't there, but I would like to think that if Yahweh said, here's your stuff, go get it, that I'm going to not question that and go after it. You see Yoshua doing it, and you see Caleb doing it. But what did this do to all the people there? The whole congregation. It put doubt. It put fear in them. All of a sudden they're scared. Who do we believe? We got who saids here. We got Moshe, who's a who said of the greatest magnitude that's relating the words of Yahweh. And all of a sudden we got these spies that came in that really saw what it was. Who's the who said we go with? What truth do we go with? This is important for us as people of Yahweh because we need to find out, are we going to listen to man or are we going to listen to Yahweh? Who is the who said of the greatest magnitude? Yahweh is the greatest who said of the greatest magnitude. All that shaped another truth for them to believe in, even though Yahweh had given them a truth already. Let's go look at the truth that Yahweh said. We're going to be in Exodus. Hold your finger right here, though. We're going to go to Exodus 3, verse 7. We're going to read verses 7 and 8. Exodus 3, 7 and 8. And Yahweh said, I have indeed seen the oppression of my people who are in Mitzrayim, and I have heard their cry because of their slave drivers, for I know their sorrows. And I have come down to deliver them from the hand of the Mitzrites, and to bring them up from the land to a good land and spacious land, to a land flowing with milk and honey, to the place of the Kenaites and the Hivites and the Amorites and the Perizzites and the Hivites and the Jebusites. Yahweh said, I came down to do this. That's pretty strong. But he says it again later on. Let's go to Leviticus 20:22. I got there really fast. It's page 126. Uh-oh. I hope I ain't got some verses missing, y'all, because I got a little note here that says, let's keep reading, and it's not the same thing. We'll find out, won't we? All right. Leviticus 20:22, we're going to read through 24. And you shall guard all my laws and all my right rulings, and do them, so that the land where I am bringing you to dwell does not vomit you out. And do not walk in the laws of the nations which I am driving out before you, For they do all these, and therefore I loathe them. But I say to you, you are going to possess their land, and I myself give it to you as possession, to possess it. A land flowing with milk and honey. There's Yahweh right there saying, I myself am doing this. But they took another who said's account in order to build their truth off of. I am Yahweh, your Elohim, who separated you from the peoples. Let's go to Numbers 14. And let's keep reading there. How about that? All right, Numbers 14. We're going to be reading verses 1 through 12. Then all the congregation lifted up their voices and cried, and the people wept that night. And all the children of Israel grumbled against Moshe and against Aharon. And all the congregation said to them, if only we had died in the land of Mitzrayim, or if only we had died in the wilderness. Do y'all hear how preposterous that is? Yahweh said, I myself am giving you this as a possession, and they're wanting to go back to slavery. You don't act in accordance with the truth as it really is. You act in accordance with the truth as you believe it. All of a sudden, they believe that going back to slavery is better than going and following Yahweh. That don't make sense. Verse 3. And why is Yahweh bringing us to this land to fall by the sword, that our wives and our children should become prey? Would it not be better for us to turn back to Mitzrayim? All of a sudden, they're starting to formulate their own truth, that our children are going to die in the wilderness. And that's not what Yahweh said, and that's not the truth. But they're starting to think it is. Now they're about to act. They're going to act, and they're going to act in accordance with the truth as they believe it versus what Yahweh said. Numbers 14:4. And they said to each other, let us appoint a leader and let us turn back to Mitzrayim. Then Moshe and Aharon fell on their faces before all the assembly of the congregation of children of Israel. And Yehoshua son of Nun and Caleb son of Jephunneh, who were among those that had spied out the land, tore their garments. And they spoke to all the congregation of the children of Israel, saying, the land we passed through to spy out is an exceedingly good land. If Yahweh has delighted in us, remember he told us he was going to give it to us. If he's delighted in us, then he shall bring us into this land and give it to us, a land which is flowing with milk and honey. Only do not rebel against Yahweh, nor fear the people of the land, for they are our bread. Their defense is turned away from them, and Yahweh is with us. Do not fear them. But they've started believing a different truth. But all the congregation said to stone them with stones. We're not going to listen to Yahweh's truth. We want to do what we want to do. Let's stone them with stones and get rid of them. Then the esteem of Yahweh appeared in the tent of meeting before the children of Israel. And Yahweh said to Moshe, how long shall I be scorned by these people? And how long shall I not be trusted by them? You know what's interesting is, if you're not trusting something, does that mean you don't believe in? With all the signs which I have done in their midst, let me smite them with pestilence and disinherit them, and make of you a nation greater and mightier than they. And we know what happens next. Moshe falls on his face and he tries to, smooth things over, and Yahweh gets cooled down a little bit. But Yahweh tells them that they will wander in the desert for the next 40 years. And you know what? That truth that you wanted to have where your children become prey and all that stuff, I'm going to put it on you. Then they start doing some funny things again. Let's go to verse 20. And Yahweh said, I shall forgive according to your word, but truly as I live and all the earth is filled with the esteem of Yahweh, for none of these men who have seen my esteem and the signs which I did in Mitzrayim and in all the wilderness, or in the wilderness, and have tried me now these 10 times and have disobeyed my voice, shall see the land of which I swore to their fathers, nor any of those who scorned me see it. So their truth just changed, and guess what? They're about to have to act in accordance with that belief now. 24. But my servant Caleb, because he has a different spirit in him and has followed me completely, I shall bring him into the land where he went, and his seed shall inherit it. Since the Amalekites and the Kenaites are dwelling in the valley, turn back now and set out into the wilderness by the way of the Sea of Reeds. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe and to Aharon, saying, how long shall this evil congregation have the grumblings against me? I have heard the grumblings which the children of Israel grumbled against me. Say to them, as I live, declares Yahweh, as you have spoken in my hearing, that's what's going to happen. That's going to be the truth. Y'all wanted it. Here you go. The carcasses of you who were grumbling against me are going to fall in the wilderness. All of you who are registered according to the entire number from 20 years old and above, none of you except Caleb, son of Jephunneh, and Yehoshua, son of Nun, shall enter the land which I swore I would make you dwell in. But your little ones, the ones you said would become prey, I shall bring them in, and they shall know the land which you have rejected. But as for you, your carcasses are going to fall in the wilderness, and your sons shall be wanderers in the wilderness 40 years, and shall bear your whorings until the carcasses are consumed in the wilderness. According to the number of the days in which you spied out the land, 40 days, a day for a year, a day for a year. For you are to bear your crookedness 40 years, and you shall know my breaking off. I am Yahweh, I have spoken. I shall do this to all this evil congregation who are meeting against me. In this wilderness, they are consumed, and there they die. He wanted to make sure y'all realize that I am the who said of the greatest magnitude. I am Yahweh, and I have spoken. Oh, man. Wonder what was going through their minds. I get the fear, but Yahweh said, go do this. He said, go do it. He didn't do it in a dream or anything like that. He said, y'all got this. I'm with you. I myself am delivering you this. And they decided to let the fear that was inside of them dictate what they were going to do. Then they do something even crazier. They said, whoop, I messed up. Let me see if I can go do something to make this right. And they mess up even further. Verse 39. And when Moshe spoke these words to all the children of Israel, the people mourned greatly. I can imagine so. And they rose up early in the morning and went up to the top of the mountain, saying, see, we have indeed sinned, but we shall go up to the place which Yahweh had spoken of. Moshe said, why do you now transgress the command of Yahweh, since it does not prosper? Do not go up, lest you be smitten by your enemies. For Yahweh is not in your midst, because the Amalekites and the Kenaites are there before you, and you shall fall by the sword, because you have turned away from Yahweh. Yahweh is not with you. But they presumed to go up to the mountaintop, but neither the ark of the covenant of Yahweh nor Moshe left the camp. So the Amalekites and the Kenaites who dwelt in that mountain came down and smote them and beat them down, even to Hormah. We as humans act in accordance with the truth, not as the truth really is, but as we believe it to be. They knew what the truth was, but they decided to neglect it. And it cost them their lives, basically. They didn't get to enjoy the promises that Yahweh had given them. It's really, really sad. Are there times in your life that you may be doing the same thing? Are there things that you believe that may be keeping you from being able to enter into the joy of your Father? Ponder on that one. Now, that whole scenario right there didn't have a real happy ending, except for Caleb and for Yehoshua. Let's go read another one that has a different truth associated with it that does have a positive ending. Let's go check out Matthew, chapter 14. Yes, ma'am. Matthew 14, we're going to be in verse 22. What had just happened here was Yeshua had just finished feeding the 5,000. And he'd taken care of that, and then he shooed the people off. And he wanted to go be by himself, so he sent his boys off to go across the sea so he could have some alone time. It didn't work out completely yet, but he got around to it. Verse 22, Matthew 14, 22. And immediately Yeshua made his taught ones enter into the boat and go before him to the other side, while he dismissed the crowds. And having dismissed the crowds, he went up to the mountain by himself to pray. And when evening had come, he was alone there. But the boat was now in the middle of the sea, agitated by the waves, for the wind was against it. And in the fourth watch of the night, Yeshua went to them, walking on the sea. And when the taught ones saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, it's a phantom. And from fear they cried. These are grown men. I don't know if this is actually tears going down, but that's what it sounds like. But immediately Yeshua spoke to them, saying, take courage. It is I, do not be afraid. And Kepha answered him and said, Master, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water. And he said, Come. And when Kepha had come down off the boat, or out of the boat, he walked on the water to go to YHWH. I want to stop right there because in the movies when they show this, it only looks like, Peter jumps out of the boat and he kind of like does a little shuffle. And then next thing you know, he's under the water. That's not what it says right here. It says he walked on the water. I don't know how far that was. But this is something that is amazing that nobody else has ever done except for YHWH that I know of. Pretty sure. I can think of Elisha hitting the water, making it come out, and him walking across, but I've never seen anybody walk on water. This is something that is amazing. Now, how did Peter do that? He knew the truth. He had a who said of the greatest magnitude that says, Come. He didn't say, hey, jump off the boat, don't worry, you ain't going to sink. He just said, Come. And because of that belief, he acted in accordance with it. And he was able to get off the boat and do something that no other human being has ever been recorded doing. Unless it was a frozen lake. We do know of an occasion when that happened. But he walked across the sea. And I like to think what happened is that as Kepha was walking along, he got far enough from the boat that all of a sudden it seemed like a distance to him. And that's when the fear sank in. And then he started looking around and there's big waves. I'm a long way from the boat. And it was at that point in time that his truth changed on the inside of him, that he gave in to that fear that was there. And then he acted in accordance with that belief, and he sank. But YHWH pulled him up. That is a positive story to see that if you believe in the things that Yahweh say and do what he says, you can do extraordinary things, unheard of things. And the scriptures is rife with it. All kinds of things. Think about the guys marching around Jericho. Why in the world would walking around a city make it fall? It doesn't matter. Yahweh said it would. What about Gideon going over there with just so few people? That shouldn't happen. But Yahweh made it happen. They acted in accordance with that belief and not the belief that they thought would be logical. We need to make sure that we're doing that on our own selves and in our own lives. This idea of acting in accordance with our belief came into play with people being healed too. Let's turn over to Matthew 9. We're going to read verses 8 through 29. Matthew 9:18. While he was saying all this to them, see, a ruler came and bowed down to himself, saying, My daughter is dead by now, but come and lay your hands on her, and she shall live. He's acting with some belief right there, sounds like. And YHWH rose up and followed him, and his taught ones too. And see, a woman who had a flow of blood for 12 years came from behind and touched his zitzit of his garment. For she said to herself, if I only act in accordance with my belief, if I only touch his garment, the truth is that I will be healed. Is that far-fetched? Well, let's read the next verse. And YHWH turned, and when he saw her, he said, Take courage, daughter. Your what has healed you? Her belief. She knew the truth, didn't she? And the woman was healed from that hour. And when YHWH came into the ruler's house and saw the flute players and the crowd making a noise, he said to them, Go back, for the girl is not dead, but sleeping. And they all laughed at him. Why'd they laugh at him? Because they knew the truth, didn't they? She's dead. We done checked her pulse. But when the crowd was put outside, he went in and took her by the hand, and the girl arose. And this report went out to all the land. YHWH had a different truth. And as YHWH passed on from there, 2 blind men followed him, crying out and saying, Son of David, have compassion on us. And when he came into the house, the blind men came into him, and YHWH said to them, What is the truth here? How are you going to act? Do you believe that I'm able to do this? And they said to him, Yea, Master. Then he touched his eyes, and he said, According to my belief, you're healed, right? No, what'd he say? According to your belief, let it be done to you. Let me ask you something. What do you believe about yourself? Where did you get that truth from? There's all kinds of things on the inside of you. Do you look in the mirror and you see something you don't like? Do you think I can't do that? Do you think I'm not strong enough? Do you think I can't sing? Do you think I can't dance? Do you think people are going to laugh at you when you get in front of and praise before Yahweh? Do you think you're unable to get the next job? Do you think that you're not capable? Do you have all these things floating inside of you? Are those truths? No, that ain't true. I'll tell you how I know. Yahweh told me it ain't true. I'd like to share that with you, but I want you, before we go there, to take a moral inventory of those things and see, are those really true? Because I guarantee you, you are acting in accordance with that belief versus the belief we're about to read about. Oh, I had something on here. Where did you get that truth from? Was it a parent? Was it a grandparent? Was it a teacher? Was it a coach? Was it a friend that didn't mean to do that? Or could it even be a bully that meant to do it? You've got to take charge of that and get rid of that truth. Let's hop over to Deuteronomy 7. Let's find out what Yahweh has to say about us. Deuteronomy 7:6. We're going to be reading through 19. I love this portion right here. For you are a set-apart people to Yahweh your Elohim. Your Elohim has chosen you to be a people for himself. I think we chose him, but that isn't what happened. He chose us. You know what else he says? Next words. He chose you for a people for himself, a treasured possession above all the people on the face of the earth. When you look yourself in the mirror and you tell yourself all those truths in there about how you're not good enough and all that stuff, that ain't what Yahweh said. Yahweh said, you are my treasured possession. Yahweh did not set his love on you nor choose you because you were numerous than any other people, for you were the least of all the peoples. But because of Yahweh loving you, and because of him guarding the oath which he swore to your fathers, Yahweh has brought you out with a strong hand and redeemed you from the house of bondage, from the hand of Pharaoh, sovereign Mitzrayim. And you shall know that Yahweh your Elohim, he is Elohim, the trustworthy El. That's the who said of the greatest magnitude right there. Guarding covenant and kindness for 1,000 generations with those who love him and those who guard his commands, but repaying those who hate him to their face to destroy them. He does not delay to do so with him who hates him. He repays him to his face. And you shall guard the command and the laws and the right rulings which I command you today to do them. And it shall be, because you hear these right rulings and shall guard and do them, that Yahweh your Elohim shall guard with you the covenant and the kindness which he swore to your fathers, and shall love you and bless you and increase you. Those are some good truths. And shall bless the fruit of your womb and the fruit of your land, your grain and your new wine and your oil, the increase of your cattle and the offsprings of your flocks in the land of which he swore to your fathers to give you. Blessed are you above all peoples. Have you ever looked in yourself in the mirror and said that to yourself? Because that's what Yahweh said about you. That's the truth you should be saying to yourself. And then go and act in accordance with that. Blessed are you above all peoples. There is not going to be a barren man or a barren woman among you or among your livestock. And Yahweh shall turn away from you all sickness and put on you none of the evil diseases of Mitzrayim which you have known. But he shall put them on all of those who hate you. And you shall consume all the peoples whom Yahweh your Elohim is delivering over to you. Your eye shall not pardon them, and do not serve their mighty ones, for it is a snare to you. When you say in your heart, these nations are greater than I am unable to drive them out, do not be afraid of them. Because remember well what Yahweh your Elohim did to Pharaoh and to all Mitzrayim. The great trials which your eyes saw, and the signs and the wonders, the strong hand and the outstretched arm by which Yahweh your Elohim brought you out. Yahweh your Elohim does so to all the peoples whom you are afraid. Yahweh said he loves you. Right there. He said he treasures you. He said he wants you to be healthy. He's not going to let any of that sickness get on you. He said he wants you to be prosperous. And he said, this is interesting, he said he will protect you to make sure these things happen. Isn't that awesome? Do you believe that's the truth? Do y'all believe that Yahweh is the who said of the greatest magnitude? Then go and act like it. Yevrekeka Yahweh va'ishmereka. Ya'ir Yahweh panavaleka v'kineka. Yasai Yahweh panavaleka v'yasemach shalom. Yahweh bless you and guard you. Yahweh make his face to shine upon you and show favor to you. Yahweh lift up his face upon you and give you perfect and complete peace.
Hey, hey, and he can make a way. Hey, hey, so humble yourselves and pray and guard his Torah. Obey each day. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.